how do you manage a property effectively with all this new legislation that feels like it's not even worth having an investment property?
Yeah.
I personally still feel that there is, because there's so much benefits of owning lots of real estate. But how do you manage it and navigate it?
We spoke about it in our last podcast. Like, the thing that I hate hearing is, I sold my investment because it was all just too hard. And all the new legislation coming in, and there's more coming on the 1st of May, which we have dealt with a lot in the industry, but this stuff coming, especially around tenancy applications, is going far beyond anything. Anyway.
That sounds like a very deep rabbit hole for another podcast.
But there is a solution to everything in the legislation. It just depends how you get there, and
knowing it.
So I'll try and say this quickly. So, for example, water usage. So if a tenant doesn't pay water usage, you would serve them a breach notice for non-payment. Now, technically, when you serve a tenant a breach notice, if they don't rectify the breach, you can send them a notice to leave. So if you send a breach notice for water, say it's $250, technically, under the letter of the law, if a tenant doesn't pay that, you can serve them a notice to leave. Now, I personally can't see any tribunal, QCAT, if you were to then go to QCAT because they didn't leave, giving you a warrant of possession for $250 of water. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, even though legally you can do that. You can do that in the legislation. But will you get the outcome that you want? No. You won't. So there's another way. So you would breach them. They don't rectify the breach. So you would apply to the RTA Dispute Resolution Service, and you would try and get them to negotiate. And the RTA they're not an advocate for either party. They just advise each person of what the legal obligations are.
Okay.
And make suggestions as to a solution. Now, in this scenario, pay the water? No? Okay, great. Notice of unresolved dispute. and then you go to the QCAT to get an order for the tenant to pay the water usage. The tribunal will order that the tenant pays the water usage as long as you have evidence that the property is water efficient. So we always recommend to owners that they have a water compliance certificate from a plumber. Not a legal requirement, but if you go to tribunal, it becomes a requirement.
These are all these layers to just preventing every situation that you're going through.
Yeah.
I know some might be listening to this going, wow, this is a lot of detail and depth of just like $250 water, but I feel it's like the 1% in the process across every aspect of managing the property that matters.
Like, I don't want to spend my hours and days going to QCAT to get orders for tenants to pay water. I don't want to do that. But it's the only way you can get them to pay water. So I've just had another thought, so I'll finish this first. So you go to the tribunal for them to pay the water. Tribunal give you an order. So they'll give the tenant a certain amount of time to pay the water. Now, if a tenant still doesn't pay the water, you can give a notice to leave for non-compliance with the tribunal order. Will you get the outcome you want then? Most likely, yes. Because you've gone through the longer process and the tenant's been given every single opportunity available to them to pay this bill and they haven't paid it. Now, you might be going, oh, it's only $250. However, there's another piece of the legislation. Once you become aware of a breach, you have 6 months to do something about it. And this is both ways, right? So if a tenant knows that owner has breached something, or if an owner knows, so for example, they haven't paid the water, if your property manager doesn't deal with it in 6 months, then you lose the rights to it. So for example, it's only $250 water. Okay, but if we don't go through this process and we don't go to the tribunal to try and get it paid, the next water that comes in, they won't pay, and the next water they come in, it won't pay. And if you get to the end of the tenancy and go, oh, we'll just claim it from the bond, if you then go to tribunal, you won't win anything that's over 6 months old because you've become aware of the breach and you haven't done anything about it. So you have to do something about it. So it's about...
Man, this is like blowing my mind at the minute. I'm just like, but I just want an investment property to grow my water. Doesn't everybody pay their bills? Well, yeah. I think, and this is why...
It's very rare that you, like, I don't want this to sound like I'm sitting here bashing tenants.
But what I like about it is
it's as an example, because most people pay their water bills.
Yeah.
But it just as an example for those that don't, there is a way to get to the outcome, but you just have to be able to understand how to navigate the legislation to get to the outcome that you want, and know that there's a certain time frame that things have to be done in. It's the same with tenants. Like let's go the other way. You've got a really crappy landlord who doesn't want to fix anything. Maybe there's safety issues in the property, or you've been asking for something, the air conditioner broke and they're refusing to fix it because they don't have air conditioning and they live fine without it.
Yeah, true. I've heard that before.
So, the proper process for tenants to follow is to breach the owner. And then it's the same process. They don't rectify the breach, then the tenants can leave, or they can go to dispute resolution to get the tribunal to make an order for them to fix something. And if a tenant doesn't do it in 6 months, you can't say apply to QCAP for rent compensation at the end of the lease if you haven't done anything about it in your 6-month time frame. So the law is fair. I don't like saying that because I don't believe it's fair in some ways, but in that regard, it works both ways.
Yeah, like it's an open street for both parties. We're just talking specifically about the landlord side. So, yeah.
So as long as you follow the process, so the tenants will just call the RTA and find out what their rights are anyway. So often the property manager, if a tenant actually follows the law, it makes our job easier.
Yeah.
Not harder, because we say this is what they can do and they've exercised their right to do this, and these are what your options are now. And we just advise owners. Most owners, again, like most tenants, are nice people and everybody wants everybody to be happy. It's only, those 5% of owners or tenants that you might have issues with.
And I know we're talking about the 5 or 10% maybe of the investment of the experience of an investment property, but it's those moments where you want a good PM.
Yeah, like you don't know you need someone until something happens.
And then you're like, oh, maybe I haven't got the best service. Who do you want in
your corner?
Yeah.
Like, because you might think, oh, it will never happen to me. And then it does.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I actually wrote down as you're talking, I'm like, well, why have an investment property, ... And I'm like, as you're talking through it, I'm like, everything you've explained, you do.
Yeah.
It's not like, I would have to do any of it. It's just part of that service. So I wrote here, good PM and good insurance equals good outcome.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, what makes a good property manager? Being proactive, being organised, understanding the legislation and how to navigate it for both parties, making the suggestions to owners for improvements, making sure you have insurance, and taking our recommendations for who the best people are in our experience. And
owners get to talk to you.
Yeah.
And your other senior PM who's got 30 plus years experience.
Yeah,
I was astounded when you told me that, because normally on property management as part of like a bigger real estate firm, and that's normally left with the most experienced people to ask questions, whereas owners get to talk directly to you.
Yeah, so directly to myself or our senior property manager. We always overstaff and always are looking for experienced people, because it is so hard to do this job if you don't understand the legislation. I help my team, obviously, but my team are more than capable and competent of talking to the owners as well. But yes, there's always a one point of contact, and I keep on top of everything that's going on, so I'm aware of everything that's going on. And some agencies, you might have a very sales-focused office and principal who, like you said, kind of leave it to just...
the team They may not know the legislation.
Yeah, it's not everybody.
Yeah.
But it's not how we manage.
Because you're property management only.
Yes.
Which is the one thing I love.